give up stuff now.
So this was the question I was going to ask next.
Oh, here we are, TP talk.
We're getting in this. Okay, this is officially the silly part of the show, I guess.
Yeah, we're back.
We're going to talk about trading Jaylen Brown and Bradley Beal and all this. Okay.
I'm just asking you this. If you had to make a big splash, does this do it?
Hey, I've been saying that.
No.
This is
not do it. Who says
forget
no?
about how much you like Jaylen. Style and fit players. Is there anything Beal does for this team currently that Jaylen doesn't do? I don't know.
I wouldn't do Jaylen. Now you might need to, but again, you're swapping out something that you need for the system that you want to carry forward. You want a big three there. Now I dump everything. 7 picks, Rob, Neesmith, Langford, all that different kind of stuff. It might not be enough, but my scenario is if he ended up forcing his way here eventually, you kind of have the upper hand in that spot. So that's the only way they're going to do it. They would never flip Brown for him.
So what's funny is you realize like 98% of the NBA would absolutely think that this is a win for Boston. It would be like, we can't give up Jaylen.
It could be a win, but you're swapping out an all-star for an all-star. And it might move the needle a little bit, but you'd still have a depth issue. You'd still have defensive concerns.
It could be a lateral move. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a lateral move. That's a good way to put it.
Sounds like a lateral move at best. You want to put him next to those guys. You want to have him as the third guy, when that contract is up, maybe sometime down the road if the Celtics, position themselves. But you don't want to swap out one of these all-stars for Beal. You want to put him next to those 2 all-stars.
That's Bobby's trade right there.
Dump those picks. I never want to talk about the draft again.
That's a great comment.
Man, Jaylen for Beal, would I do it? It's so tough, man. I mean,
here we go again. Too many wings.
It's just tough. It's tough to say no to acquiring a guy like Beal. I mean,
Celtics say no to the leading scorer in the NBA, but again, right?
It's just tough. I mean, you're giving up Jaylen Brown, and with the idea that you actually think he could get better, right? Than he is. I think Beal is as good as you're ever, and he's very good, but I don't think he's going to get any better.
But those two, those two
right?
Maybe it's just me, but it reminds me a lot of LeBron and D Wade. It would be very, very similar, their approach and the way they would attack.
You need 3. I mean, did Brooklyn give up Kyrie for Harden? You do whatever you can to just get those 3 together. Trade everything else.
I don't think you do it because of the lateral move aspect of it, but it is an interesting.
Now they've been really good. Tonight would have been 8 out of 9 for them, so they're trending in the right direction. The scenario I played out early in the year is kind of gone for them right now. They're going to be in the playoff picture deep into the year, probably.
Because I know we stopped talking about it, but I just want to reiterate that the whole Rob thing and trading him. What we said in the last show, John, is that one of the reasons why Danny Ainge might not want to make a deal right now is because if he can hang on to Rob for the rest of the season and through the playoffs, which is another reason why you don't tank, and Rob puts together some good performances, you really do have a good tradable asset to put with the TPE, and you can talk about maybe a Beal-like levels trade. If I'm not saying that that's all.
Can't do Beal then. He's $35 million after this year.
No, I get that, but I'm talking about that caliber of a player with the TPE involved, because right now you really can't get that great of a player with the TPE because, again, you don't have a whole lot of assets to put with it. I know that we've really talked about this a lot, but now it's starting to say, okay, you might have something here in Rob, right? So if you hold on to that and he puts together a solid season and a solid postseason, you have something to offer, which is better than not having anything to offer. Whether or not you end up pulling the trigger or not on the deal, you at least have that option now.
Hey, I think you got to push the issue on it. You need stuff now. You can always trade that stuff later. You're going to tank a season if you don't add stuff now. I keep saying this. They're way too thin. If they get injured come playoff time, they're an automatic out at that point.
If you get injured come playoff time,
that's the way it is.
Live with it. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
What's going to happen? It's going to happen almost every year. You need pieces in place that allow you to sustain.
When you're talking about having to go for it, Bobby, you're talking about aging superstars, and they've just on the downside of their prime and your window is closing with these guys. This isn't the case. You have your two superstars locked up who haven't even hit their peak yet.
Yeah,
So
but I think
there is no single season desperation surrounding this year. If they tank or they go one and done in the first round, so be it. Or someone gets hurt and they fall, down and they're an 8th seed, so be it. You reload.
Yeah,
I mean, you come
make
back
changes
with
in the offseason.
25 and under superstars.
If you don't get something in the offseason at that point, you're losing this $28 million hole forever. Like,
maybe it's a gamble. We all know it's a gamble.
Massive gamble bringing it to the offseason.
It's no worse than squandering it on nothing.
Gamble using it now too.
Using it now for something that doesn't really do anything for you long term. You only make the deal when the deal is there. And if you lose it, that's the gamble. But I get it. Like, it's still better than throwing it away on crap right now just to try and save this season. Like, that makes no sense.
I'm with you, John.
Go ahead, Josue. But you want to make it count. You don't want to just use it to marginally improve.
Well, I'm with you on that, John. But I think it would be a colossal, collapse if they were to get bounced out of the first round for obvious reasons. But specifically, the thing that we talked about earlier in the show. I mean, those guys, the Shemis or whoever, Nate Neesmith, Rob Williams, you want to get deep into the playoff because everyone will be watching. You want to put those guys on the national stage. And I think, you go into the TP, you go into the offseason, and let's say you haven't used the TPE. At least now, these guys, their stocks are higher than they ever were now. We're talking, weeks away from the deadline or whatever it is. And you have a better chance to make a deal, whereas in the past you didn't have a whole lot of assets to play with, and you didn't have, the TPE to plug in there to make a deal work. And now you do. And maybe a couple of those players, there are teams out there that are more likely to do a deal because of one of those guys they really like, and they saw what they did in the postseason.
Eventually there'll be sellers in this market. And at that point, the asking price isn't going to be smart. It's probably not even going to be Rob at that point. Like, there's going to be deals out there, and I still think Barnes could end up in that place where the acquisition costs there wouldn't be insane or, something you just can't do. Like, there's going to be, if they make an aggressive offer, especially with the picks, I think, there's going to be moves to be made this year. Like, again, I wouldn't be giving up the top level assets for the role guys for the depth that they need, but they can't do nothing right now. And even Ainge, as hesitant as he was to use the TP in those interviews last week and Wick, they said they might use part of it because they know they need something. There's got to be something here. They can't do nothing with this team because the team's so thin. They need so much right now. They're punting on a season of Tatum's and Brown's prime. Even if you don't think they can win it all this year, you gotta commit to it.
You're not punting. You're just playing it as it lies. You're always looking to improve.
Playing it as it lies is a disaster. They lost the player and didn't replace him.
I know, but that's what happened.
What do you mean?
That's why he's in an apology camp.
He did with those.
Not always an option.
Rookies.
Like, you can't always undo everything you've done. That's the thing, is because they've always been so rich in assets, you could always say, well, just flip the picks for a star now. They don't have those assets anymore. Like I said, they have
all of their picks.
They have this piece of paper and some really crappy picks and a bunch of young guys on the roster that don't have value yet. So
these
at this
great
point,
picks. Yeah.
How do you know? 2025. Who knows what the team could look like then?
Again,
put some protections on that. Swaps.
When you have Tatum and Brown locked up for the next 4 years,
especially in the Eastern Conference, Bobby, where you don't have to go 500 to make the playoffs. I mean,
you can look into the Celtics' future and see that you're not going to get anything better than a 15 or 16 pick from them at best in the next 4 years. It's not worth it. You're outside the lottery unless you have to go way into the future to get into to think that you're going to get in the lottery just based on the fact that they have Brown and Tatum.
Yeah, 2 guys under 25.
2 guys under 25 are stars. You can roll those guys out every year with this.
You're going to make the playoffs every single year.
Into the playoffs.
Yeah. Hey, I mean, there's definitely a risk to doing it now. There's risk to waiting as well. You mentioned the advantages of waiting. There's teams with cap space. There's free agents that can't be acquired. Yeah, your pick's not as valuable at that point. Every team's wheeling and dealing, so there's a lot of more competition for different players at those spots. There's so much of a risk if you wait up until the last moment. I know the date isn't exact. I think it is next fall that the TP disappears. So there would be some time.
Calendar year.
Yeah. So into the fall, essentially. So the problem is the clock is just ticking so fast at that point. The sense of urgency is going to rise so high. The cost could even push higher at that point. Like, I think the need this season to have an extra player, to have depth, to have, a position that you don't have right now in the wing or point guard or wherever else, it's just so crucial to this team right now, because I don't think this team's in a spot, even though I mentioned tanking a week ago, that you don't give up on this entirely, and you certainly don't do nothing. Like, sitting in the middle the way they are right now is just, it's not an option to me. It really isn't. Yep. They're rung below the best of the East, but they're too good to be getting any good sort of pick or anything like this point. And do we really want to be heading into the draft next year talking about who the Celtics are going to pick after these last couple of years? I mean, I want to have no pick whatsoever. I want to just sleep through draft night this summer.
Are you upset, Bobby?
Plenty of time to trade the pick. You don't need to trade it like by tomorrow. You still can wait.
Picks have greater value when people know what the picks are.
No, I disagree. When there's a promise of it being like 15 or 16 right now, compared to whatever it could be, if
or 19,
it's not going to be 15. It's not going to be that bad.
That's about where they are right now.
But I'd be surprised if it was that good of a pick. Maybe it will be. Fine.
Throwing this out there.
Fine.
Throwing this out there for the Beal people, this is the one scenario we've talked about where Beal is possible. The only scenario is he pulls a Harden and holds them hostage and says, trade me to Boston or else. That's it.
Coming. That's coming.
No, sure. But I mean, it has to be Boston or else. And I do not believe
that's my conspiracy
scenario.
Well, no, you know it's going to be. It's going to be the short list of teams, But
on the short list, again, if it's Boston, Miami, I still think no matter who we're up against, who the Celtics are up against, they're going to be short on assets.
Yeah.
Has any player ever demanded a trade to Boston? I mean, what are we like? This is what we do.
It's the Tatum thing, Jimmy. Who does he want to play with?
Buddies.
Yeah, but Jimmy, you don't make a list. You don't think Boston can make it on that? Make it on that list?
Maybe they can make it on that list, but they still need to have a good trade package to get him. Just because he wants to go to a certain team doesn't mean the Wizards are going to bend over backwards.
All you have to do, everything I've said tonight, you just have to look at that Rockets-Nets deal. I know it was ridiculous, and the Rockets have done some stupid things, but Harden strong-armed them in such a way that all it took was some picks and a couple players and another team to get involved. Like, if he's really pushing Boston,
they traded good players and a lot of picks.
What do we talk about last show, Jimmy? Though, who do we compare Robert Williams to? How did that deal get done? That was a big part of that, right? That's a big pillar. Someone like Jared Allen. If
they don't have a Levert,
if his stock rises up, maybe he's the Jared Allen of the trade. Maybe Neesmith is Levert. It's just too early to say right now. But I think Bradley Beal down the road, absolutely, 100%. If they don't get things together in Washington, which is a really good chance of that, I think he demands a trade. And if he makes a short list, you don't think Boston's on that list? I think 100%.
Oh, absolutely.
He knows going into this situation what it's going to be. Playing next to Jayson Tatum, playing for someone like Brad Stevens. These two, they talk about this stuff all the time. They coming up from St. Louis together, the background, everything.